Every night they slept inside a truck. But no one knew the real reason. Imagine this. After driving hundreds of miles hauling heavy cargo, a truck driver doesn't go home. Not because he doesn't want to, but because he no longer has a home. All he owns is an old truck, and inside its small cabin lies the woman he loves, his wife, who can no longer walk. This is a story about a love measured not by wealth, but by unwavering loyalty when life becomes unbearably difficult. A home called an old truck. Every morning before sunrise, Rocco would wake up. The first thing he did wasn't checking the truck's engine or reviewing his delivery schedule. Instead, he looked at his wife, Cinta, sleeping peacefully on a simple bed made of wooden boards and a thin mattress behind the driver's seat. He gently pulled the blanket over her legs. "Good morning, my love." Cinta smiled softly. "Is it morning already?" "Yes. We have a long journey ahead today." For the past 3 years, their entire life had taken place inside an old truck. There was no living room, no bedroom, no kitchen, just a tiny cabin that served as both their home and their shelter. Life hadn't always been this way. Rocco was an ordinary truck driver earning just enough to support his family. They weren't wealthy, but they had a small house they had spent years paying off. It was in that modest home where they built their dreams. One day, they hoped to open a small food stall so Rocco wouldn't have to spend his life on the road. But fate had other plans. One afternoon, while Cinta was returning home from the market, a speeding vehicle struck her. The accident severely damaged her spine. The doctor said she would most likely never walk again. Rocco's world collapsed. But the hardship didn't end there. The costs of surgery, therapy, medication, and long-term care kept rising. Their savings disappeared. They sold their motorcycle. They sold Cinta's jewelry. Finally, they had no choice but to sell the little house they loved so dearly to pay for her medical treatment. Even after all that sacrifice, Cinta's condition showed little improvement. Now they had nowhere to live. The only thing left was the truck Rocco drove for work. Many people suggested that Cinta move in with relatives. But Rocco always shook his head. "I don't want her to feel abandoned." So he transformed the back of the truck's cabin. He installed a thin mattress, a small electric fan, a plastic storage cabinet, a medicine shelf, simple curtains, even a portable stove. It wasn't comfortable, but it was enough to call home. Life on the road was much harder than they had imagined. When heavy rain poured all night, water leaked through the roof. During hot afternoons, the cabin felt like an oven. Sometimes they stopped at highway rest areas just to wash themselves with whatever water was available. Even so, Cinta rarely complained. What hurt her the most was seeing her husband grow thinner every day. After driving for hours, Rocco would still lift her into her wheelchair. He bathed her, changed her clothes, cooked every meal, washed the dishes, gave her medicine, then returned to driving again the next morning. One evening, another truck driver asked, "Why don't you leave your wife with your relatives?" Rocco smiled gently. 15 years ago, she stood by me when I had absolutely nothing. Now that she needs me, how could I ever leave her? Everyone who heard those words fell silent. Day after day, Rocco continued working. Sometimes he drove thousands of miles. Whenever Cinta felt pain, he immediately pulled over. If a delivery arrived late, so be it. His wife's well-being mattered far more. Because of this, several companies stopped hiring him. They considered him unreliable due to late deliveries. His income became even smaller, yet he never complained about life. One morning, Cinta quietly said, "My love, yes. If one day I'm gone, promise me you'll marry again." Rocco stopped what he was doing. He sat beside her, holding her frail hand tightly. He whispered, "I didn't marry you because you were healthy. I married you because I chose you." Tears rolled silently down Cinta's cheeks. Without them realizing it, their story began reaching others. One day, a college student resting at a highway stop noticed Rocco gently feeding his wife inside the truck. He secretly recorded a short video. There was no dramatic music, no emotional narration, just a husband patiently feeding his wife inside an old truck. The video quickly spread across social media. Millions of people were deeply moved. Many commented that this was what true love really looked like. A few days later, help began arriving. Someone donated a new mattress. Another person gave them a wheelchair. A local repair shop fixed their truck free of charge. A community of truck drivers raised money for them. A business owner even offered Raka a driving job with a more flexible schedule. For the first time in years, Raka finally saw a glimpse of hope. Several months later, a charitable foundation helped them rent a small house. The house wasn't fancy. Its walls were unfinished. Its floor was still plain concrete. But to Raka and Sinta, it felt like a palace. On the first day they entered, Raka pushed Sinta's wheelchair into the living room. She burst into tears. For years, I've dreamed of seeing the ceiling of a home again. Raka cried too. We finally made it home. Although they now had a place to live, Raka continued working as a truck driver. He still worked hard. But now, every trip ended with him returning home. No more sleeping inside the cramped truck cabin. No more worrying about rain leaking through the roof at night. Sinta also resumed regular physical therapy. Although she still couldn't walk, her spirit slowly returned. She even began making handmade crafts from home to help support their family. One afternoon, a journalist asked Raka, "What is the secret that keeps you going?" Raka smiled and replied, "Being tired is normal. Being poor is something you can fight through. But never let the person you love feel alone. That's the promise I've always kept." The moral of the story: true love is not measured by expensive gifts or beautiful words. Sometimes, love is simply choosing to stay beside the person you cherish, even after life has taken almost everything away. Loyalty does not mean living without hardship. Loyalty means staying, caring, and holding on to the hand of the one you love, even when storms never seem to end. Because in the end, a home is not defined by walls or a roof. A home is wherever someone looks at you and says, "I will stay with you, no matter what happens."